Hi, everyone. Welcome to the TiE Silicon Valley Golden Globes event, a forum for celebrating new technologies and startups. I'm Rachel Masters, head of creators and brands at Virtualness, a mobile-first platform that makes generative AI and blockchain accessible to creators, brands, and sports teams, media, and the entertainment industry as a whole. And you probably are very familiar with our amazing co-founders, Curator, who's also our CEO, and Saurabh Doshi, we are also like a very devoted Thai startup company. But tonight I have the honor of speaking with Shivani Mitra, who's a researcher and investor who delves into the intricate dynamics between free expression and consciousness in emerging technologies, with a notable presence in the Ethereum, NFT, and open source software development communities since 2020. Shivani has played a pivotal role in founding decentralized projects that create widely used stories and tools. Today, Shivani is the co-founder at the Museum of Crypto Art and the managing partner at Shiro San Fund within the Global Asset Capital. Her previous work focused on research in global healthcare systems, and she holds a BA in art history, just like me, and in biochemistry, not like me, from Washington University in St. Louis. And Shivani, is such a pleasure to speak to you and meet you today. I'm so curious, how did you start as a Harvard School researcher and end up co-founding a Museum of Crypto Art and becoming a managing partner at the Shiro San Fund?
The journey is certainly unplanned. It's an intuitive, following opportunities and intuition around certain humanistic things, right? Which isn't medicine, where you're interventionally saving someone's life, but you are thinking about what are the ways that humanity can thrive and how can I be a part of making that happen. That is the transition. It very much came as a result of me not being good at taking tests to get into the intensity of med school. I was certainly good enough to do it, but I knew it wasn't the right path. And for a long time, I was so confused on how to figure out what could work for me. And yeah, it kind of manifests, it just happened really fast. It was 2019 to now. Yeah.
And I guess that leads me to the next question. Where were you and how and why did you first hear about Web3 and blockchain and then teach yourself how to get involved? I know for me personally, it took me 2 times to give myself a pep talk and be I can do this. I can to join this DAO,
Yeah, I mean, for me, so for about 6 years from high school to 2019, I was trying to go to med school. So pre-med, research, everything. But in the process, I made friends with a lot of people from different backgrounds. And my friend in 2018 was a former landlord for one of the founders of Ethereum.
Oh, wow.
And so she was hey, this thing is awesome. These guys are trying to think about programmable money, different financial systems, all this kind of stuff. And I was okay, that's great. But then in the start of the pandemic, which is February, March 2020, I started to hear more from other people, and online I was looking more at a place like Super Rare, which is I remember looking at it and being this is way too insane that I'm not going to pursue it. And then in August of 2020, through my family, I was introduced to my now co-founder for Museum of Crypto Art, and he was in a traditional crypto investor, like trader. He was looking for someone with an art background. And I was like, I did art history and I miss it every day. I miss doing art. So then I met him, and then he was like, listen, this is happening. Like, this isn't just like an idea of tokenized artwork. Like, it's actually happening. Then I just like full on went in. Yeah.
And so how do you define like doing art and like then, and then I guess this leads me into the next question. Like, how did you both decide to co-found the Museum of Crypto Art?
Well, I actually started by just rapidly learning, which involved quite independent work on both of our parts. And like the process of me figuring out what like blockchain is, cryptocurrency is, like decentralization, like Ethereum, like that was a steep learning curve that I was so excited to go through. And it was like 3 to 4 months of that. At a certain point, I realized I understood the words and the ability of the tech enough that I basically went back to him and was like, hey, I want to do this like full time. And at that point, his own kind of relationship with his like business partner had kind of split in different directions. And I was inexperienced with crypto, but I think I knew how to navigate the artist side. And then we're like, okay, we're joining forces like fully. And like, you know, and then in May of 2021 is when like the Museum of Crypto Art was actually incorporated. It was just an online project, like Twitter metaverse spaces for the previous like year and a half. Yeah.
Nice. And what is the mission of the museum?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us know and love art museums. They are designed to cement like stories and help us realize what parts of humanity make us like human. So the role of a museum is an important one, but it's actually founded only in the last like 150 years under a context of oftentimes controlling the narrative of which art matters the most and which people matter the most. So, you know, I studied art history. I worked in an art museum. Like I loved it, but I was also taught for 3.5 years European art history, which at some point I called bullshit on it, which I should have done earlier. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it thoroughly and learn a lot. But, you know, Museum of Crypto Art is about what happens when you try to find the truth of artistry from a bottoms up approach, which is what decentralization is. It's thousands of people across the world, in this case, artists, who have decided that their digital artistry can be collected and transferred and valued through an entire new financial system. And they believe that what they are doing is artwork. It's not just JPEGs moving with dollar signs attached to it, right? So Museum of Crypto Art is in the spirit of stewarding that movement, accompanying the artists, giving them grants, creating open source technology so that they can move their artwork between 2-dimensional screens and 3-dimensional places. You know, we've done like 40 exhibitions worldwide with different physical museums. We have a collection of almost like 1,000 plus like artworks that are on Ethereum. And then we have a decentralized art collection, which is contributed by like 5,000 plus people. So Museum of Crypto Art is interested in cryptocurrency and the spirit of it as it applies to artists. I would argue that the artwork that has been tokenized is the strongest application of cryptocurrency that I have seen so far, because Bitcoin and Ethereum are incredible, but to an extent, they have been limited to acting as speculation vehicles. And that doesn't mean that they don't have value in post right now for the next like 50 years. I fully believe in crypto, but I think there has to be use cases of human beings using these things. beyond storage of value and moving of markets. Ethereum obviously has that intrinsically built in. But the like thousands of artists using crypto is like a very clear example of how it can be used. That's Mocha. It is like the visual narrative of this larger movement of decentralization. Yeah.
And so how do you like act as a curator of all of this decentralized operation, and where is like the community? Like that's one of the most interesting things.
Totally.
Web3 is like the voice of the community. So how do you as a curator also interact with the community?
Well, a lot of it is spending hours looking at artwork. And realizing which visuals are copy pasted, which ones are unique, which ones have stories within seconds, which ones have stories within 10 minutes of looking at someone's entire artistic process. For me, the curation came down to like digital art has been around since the 60s. Internet art, computer art, it's not a new phenomena. It's just been unaccepted by most people. Crypto art is like the visuals matter, the like story, the aesthetic, the feeling matters, but the fact that this person has made something happen, time-stamped forever on chain without the intention of wanting to sell it, mind you, most of the time, especially in the first couple years, that itself is like part of the artisticness to it. So I curated from an angle of actually talking to every single person that I could who was making artwork that I thought was incredible. Because once I understood where they came from, what their story was, I knew that there was like a story that would have lasting value and represented actually like innovation. There's a lot of shitty NFTs. So yeah.
I would love to hear like some of the stories actually of some of the artists and about some of the exhibitions that you've done today, and like, you know, how they've had an impact on culture.
I think like one of my favorite ones is we worked with Hanshan Art Museum in Shenzhen in China, and this M50 space in Shanghai, and we programmed a like set of exhibitions around the idea of an avatar and what it means to like have who you are on a screen and who you are like in real life, right? And that took like 2 months because we had like a language barrier. We were going back and forth. They wanted to have Chinese artists in collaboration with like Western artists. And that was really cool. We ended up curating like 40 artists in total. And many of them, they were just meeting from across the world, like on Discord. You know, they would just meet each other. What ended up happening is the show went on, and within 3 days, China had banned crypto. So the organizers were like, we're probably going to get shut down. And I was like, no, keep going. This is the greatest story, right? For like, you know, a group of artists that will be censored. That is like the stuff that we remember most of the time, because it demonstrates human beings who are pushing back against systems that don't work. So like that was really fun, and I'll remember that forever. It was also, I realized I might have pushed it too far, being like, let's get censored, right? But like that was really cool. There's a group of artists in Buenos Aires in Argentina. Argentina has like a crazy inflation. So they actually use USDC as a store of value. There's a huge black market for that. This group of artists, like they live very much like within legal bounds, but they effectively have some of the most technically, contextually incredible surrealist digital art I've ever seen. And I think a lot of it is as the result of living in a place where you don't have stability or a system in place that you are like relying on. Most of us in the United States, even if everything like, you know, is crazy news-wise, like we believe there is like a structure here that will stay. So when you don't have that structure, you certainly start to think in a much more outside the box sense. I wish I could like show visuals, which I can like send links for, but we did a couple exhibitions with them in virtual reality environments, which were so cool. It was like 4-dimensional art pieces where like it's a 360 view that you step inside of a world, like a virtual reality world is the artwork. They did like an in-person thing where they kind of played with like gaming rigs and kind of created forests and had gaming rigs like in them. They just think about like human nature computer in such a cool way. That's probably one of my favorite things. There's a couple artists from India and East Africa who like 1 ETH is like a house, right? And some of those experiences, these are like different exhibitions. We would do an exhibit in like Switzerland with like some museum. We do an exhibit in like Boston with a gallery. But getting to know these artists and how their lives were being transformed, those are things that I cannot forget because they're just facts that like these people would have no chance at uplifting themselves maybe with their artwork, but this circular economy gave them that chance. Yeah.
That's pretty powerful. If anyone has any questions, we're going to be I'll be taking questions a little bit later, so feel free to start populating them in the chat. Some of us have been really lucky going to like Dubai's Museum of the Future, which is very interactive and VR focused, and like Team Lab has done a lot of exhibitions in the Bay Area. And so like, what is the Museum of the Future going to look like from your opinion? And like, how will being like on chain, like help things?
Yeah. I mean, I still think like one of the greatest innovations of blockchain is the timestamping. It's not even like, yes, like the transactions, the immutability, like that stuff's amazing. The timestamping from like a museum standpoint is incredible because now you cannot rewrite history. Right. Like I know like, like we have been taught that the source of human enlightenment is from Greek thought, like Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, like primarily we're taught in school. They actually got their inspiration from the Rig Veda, which is up not in India, right? But it's like in Persia, somewhere that's like outside of the realm of like Western civilization. That narrative was cut by the British during colonial times when museums started, right? So I love museums, but they also have done a very good job at rewriting history. And when you have timestamping, you cannot do that. Yes, you could abstract it to an extent, but I think it provides verification of behavior and innovation in an artistic sense. So, that's the principle with which Museum of Crypto Art also acts on. In terms of like 20 years, I think there's a whole world where there is like, multiple AIs that are analyzing blockchain history and understanding what's happened where and how. That I think makes sense to me because I don't like, for example, with the museum, I don't think it's going to be run by a human. Like, I don't think it makes sense that it would. We are so tech forward. We're like basically fully virtual. Like, why would we have that happen? And we have so much data that is fully decentralized. So like, that's like the ideal. But I also know that like behind the scenes in the New York City, like art world, you can put stuff on chain that's just not true. So it's a push and a pull, but I think the Museum of the Future is of the people and speaks true to like what they are doing when it is happening, which is subcultures, interactions, artwork, music, writing. Broadening the idea of art beyond like the thing on the wall,
Yeah.
I
never really thought about AI as curator before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so sitting here in 2023, like coming back to where we are now, and now is like a really great time probably to be making investments in digital art. And so what, from your point of view as a curator, makes like an NFT worthy of being part of a museum collection? Like what criteria should people look for?
I mean, there's a lot of like private collectors, like crypto, like dudes who like have museums, right? And like they will say like, they're like, this is the best artist because I spent this much money on them, right? Like I would say, I think a museum that is trying to steward something for the public good, which in this case we are like trying to do, actually a lot of the artwork that is in our collection is artwork that was made not with the intention of selling it for like a ton. It was tokenized like as part of the artist exploration. I think that intention really is important. But it's not the only intention that matters. That's just like one thing. Another thing is I think there has to be some kind of demonstration of like, it's a two-directional relationship this artist is trying to create between like a person and them. It's not just like a one directional, like this is like my marketing like vehicle. I've seen that a lot with NFTs. Obviously, I'm so deep in NFTs that I realize as I'm talking out loud, I'm putting clauses to like what I've seen. The truth is what goes in a collection is highly subjective. And for me, it's based on my experience and interviewing of hundreds of artists and weighing and understanding which ones come from which backgrounds, which ones are pursuing different things, and what our team for 2 years thought to be valuable and worth preserving. Yeah.
And we were talking about the traditional art world earlier, but do you spend time with traditional artists and try to convince them to do digital art, or do you just let them come around to it eventually?
A lot of like emerging artists I meet, so like 22-year-old, like, loves making art, but works at like Cheesecake Factory. Right? For them, I'll be like, if I really see something that's incredible, I'll be like, yeah, tokenizing could really help you. You could find collectors, you could meet other artists, you might be able to like monetize something here, which could give you like your path, a lot. I have met also like influencers, like people who have like 100K million followers on Instagram. A lot of them say that having 1,000 different collectors of your NFTs is more money and more sustainability than 100K followers.
Oh,
because you cannot actually take that 100K followers to something that lets you have a full-time job or sustainable income, because you might have to wait for brand partnerships, or then you might have to start doing ads, which you don't want to do, right? But if you sell an NFT for like 0.01 ETH to 1,000 different people, that might actually give you a place to start. So those artists, I'm like, this is a place to start. Artists that have a long-term practice, like that's physical in nature or like something, I'm not going to tell them like, you should make an NFT. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And so tell me about like, how do you get patrons to come visit the museum? Like is traditional like digital marketing campaigns? It sounds like you do partnerships with physical museums. What's your...
Yes. Yeah, definitely like partnerships with physical places who want to show the art like in real places in across Earth for sure. Virtual events, like I've explored like I would say all the virtual reality worlds so far and done exhibitions in there. People actually do show up even though it's small. A lot of it is Twitter for sure. It's like making people feel like they have a place to be safe, which in this case is artists, right? The patrons of the museum are a lot of people who have done well in crypto and want to create an economy or some kind of world that can have an application of it. And they're really passionate about decentralization from like a religious point of view. They have faith in it, right? Yeah.
And so, and how is the like, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Like, how has the downturn in the crypto market affected artists?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, it's like, it's emotional. I mean, artists are emotional. Like even I'm emotional, right? Like, it's tough, but it was coming for a long time. I'm quite glad it's happened. There's a lot of unsustainable gambling and speculation happening.
Yeah. And
So
so
yeah.
a lot of us in the like Web3 startup world, we're calling this like heads down building time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Without the constant like hype cycles. So what does the heads down building time look like in the art world?
Yeah, I mean, in my like worldview that I see, it is definitely like people paring back, being like, what are the principles with which we entered? Like, do those still apply? Like, we're
Mhm.
dealing with a highly emerging market. It's like a couple years, especially on the Web3 side, right? The crypto side, I know since like 2011, but I would draw a distinction between like blockchain applications and like cryptocurrency trading. So everyone's like, okay, what are the principles that apply? Where is the regulatory environment going? That's like the biggest question, I think, on a lot of people's minds. If it gets worse, what are we going to do? If it gets normal, how are we going to engage with people in a way that removes the speculation and gambling? Yeah, I think there's like an orientation happening. Also, there's some really cool tech being built to abstract the really clunky tech. So like wallet abstraction, being able to log in with an email address and having an OX address being created automatically on the back end. Like myself personally, I've been working with Avalanche, which is like a blockchain. We've been working with them to like steward their NFT like ecosystem that they really want to have incubated and ready to go. So that's a lot of like research, understanding, building. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And so Rajiv Bali asked a great question, which is like paintings and sculptures are easy to put into visualization, but how about poetry, composition, vis-a-vis crypto and tokenization? Secondly, is tokenization of art a substitute to registration and patenting?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so it was poetry and what else?
Poetry and compositions.
Composition. Yeah. I've seen some really cool on-chain poetry. So like on-chain is separate from, like, technically speaking, an image NFT is a file on IPFS that is connected to like a code base. It's not actually like on the chain itself. There's just a connection there. There is some really interesting on-chain code and on-chain poetry where like when you are looking at it, you are looking at words that are stored in a very, very specific way. And it's compute intensive to an extent in creating it, and you have to have technical knowledge. That stuff is really fun. I've seen like normal poetry that is tokenized that's done really well. There's this artist named Sasha Styles who does really cool poetry. And she's awesome. She's like done stuff at Christie's, like all these galleries now. Like she's certainly thinking about medium fluid things that are not just visual. The second question was on tokenization as a registration. Yeah, I mean, I've seen, I've talked to companies who are like doing vintage wines, maybe like gemstones, even like Porsche, like Mercedes, like for like Louis Vuitton, like companies that want to build like brand integrity and loyalty. The registration means something in the gem sense or the antique sense. The registration can also mean something for someone who wants to get closer to a brand. So like Louis Vuitton's NFT stuff, I think they have like 39 of these like digital trunks. If you get one of those, you get access to specific Louis Vuitton bags over the next like 2 years that no one else will get access to. If that's what you mean. If you mean just like pure registration, I've talked to companies who are like, ooh, let's upload like our entire fine art collection as a registration. My question at some point is like, why are you making this decentralized? Why don't you just have a centralized blockchain? If your intention is to not share it, but just to have it internally, like, the trading of gems or stones or antiques, I can imagine registration and authenticity that has a tokenization component being very helpful. But again, you have to look at what an industry's incentive is. Do they have an incentive to actually make things transparent? If they don't have an incentive to make it transparent, they're not going to put it on Ethereum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And talk to me about like dynamic NFTs and like
Yeah.
fluid like poetry. Like what are the opportunities around those?
Those are really fun. I mean, I have a couple where there's one project called Finalier where depending on how crypto markets are doing, there's a little character that gets sad or gets happy. So the NFT is connected to like probably some kind of like doing it like a dashboard of like Bitcoin prices by the hour. That is really fun. There's some interesting dynamic NFT work that we're doing that's like we're basically have an NFT that 713 artists helped make. And we've been pushing that out and saying if you have one of these, you can redeem it over time for another object or experience. So that's kind of some of the dynamism, which is not code based, but you now hold something which represents you know, a label on who you are as a person that you can now leverage towards more experiences or our future. What are some other dynamic NFTs that are fun? There's some like some of the stuff we've done in virtual worlds is pretty crazy. So like we have 3D objects, which are like pieces of architecture. Those are NFTs, actually, they're tokenized in the virtual world. You can bring up to 32 NFTs into that object. So we kind of layered it. So like the single artwork is tokenized. The container of many is as well. This is because we want to expand the museum so that anyone can make a room or an exhibition of it over time. So our reasons for making it this complex are because we want everything on chain. So that's like a dynamic part of it, but that's a choice.
And
yeah.
It's kind of interesting, like let's talk about like going off chain and burning.
Yeah.
You talk about burning and like how that can be how that is used by different
the burn to redeem stuff I've seen, it's cool, it works. You know, I've seen like people get excited about the fact that like Damien Hirst did like a cool thing, right? He had physical paintings and NFTs. If you burn the NFT, you could get the physical painting. If you destroyed the painting, you could get the NFT. So he was playing with the idea of like destroying something digitally or physically. Some of the burn to redeem stuff for like speculation purposes is a bit funny, if I'm honest. It's like a bunch of people burning stuff they paid hundreds of dollars for maybe the opportunity to make another $100. And at some point you're like, bro, what are you doing? Yeah, there's one artist that like burned like a couple CryptoPunks, which are these like super valuable, like 100K collectible NFTs. He burned them as like a statement, you know, on like what it means to burn. And like, I think that's funny, but I'm also like, that's cool, dude. Go for it. Like, go crazy. Like, start to play with this idea of burning. What does that mean? He's awesome though. I love his art. Yeah.
And so where do you see the fields of like Ethereum and NFTs and decentralized tech heading like in the next 5 years? I know we talked like about the far future, but like what do you, like as we hopefully like as this market recovers, like especially with ETH, like where do you think we're headed?
I think at baseline, once trading cryptocurrencies becomes cheaper than trading normal, like for the financial industry, which is happening, it will take on a life of its own. Now that is like something that is being policed and governed now, right? So I don't know what's going to happen on like the regulation side, honestly, in like 5 years. My guess is that some things will be allowed and some things really won't be allowed. That world means that you'll have like a place that's a bit more institutional, a bit more palatable for people. Maybe your average like 16-year-old will like get an NFT to go to a concert. I can easily imagine that happening. Maybe your average gamer like might redeem an NFT for like a specific game that he like wants to get, right? Like I can imagine some of these things happening. If they're on private blockchains versus if they're on Ethereum, I don't know. It depends on this regulation. That's like the institutional like world. The rebellious, not acceptable world, I think it'll be really, really crazy and it'll be fun. It will be for people who are maybe outside the Western world. More so than those of us here, because it will represent an opportunity of wealth redistribution. And I think that's so powerful. And I believe in 5 years that you would see Ethereum and Bitcoin used or at least held by many more people. The application of NFTs in that process, I think it could be through art, it could be through creative content, it could be in like a Trojan horse kind of way. You know, I honestly have met people from like Indonesia, Argentina, China, East Africa, like not every single country on earth who are using these things to make lives. I don't think that's going to go away. Yeah.
Interesting. And it's also interesting in what you're just saying, and like in markets where it's regulated versus unregulated, how it's going to affect.
Yeah. It will be different. Yeah.
Super interesting. So speaking of markets, what do you do at Shiro San Fund, and like what criteria do you use to selecting projects to invest in?
Well, it's so tricky right now because I honestly am, you know, the business of running a fund is to like make it do well, not to just like keep deploying. Right. So right now I'm like, okay, let's orient. Let's like understand. Obviously, like with the digital asset world, there's certainly an insight I have into what I think will do well and when it could do well. So that has governed like those investments. More so the fund is under the idea of like emerging digital behavior and technology. What does it mean for kind of smaller moments to represent a bigger shift in the way people live and the way they interact and their mediums of exchange? So this has involved investments across like extended reality, which is like VR, in like AI over the last year and a half, which has involved a little more of like the person who is customizing their experience as opposed to the company that is dictating their experience of AI. You know, and then on like the more infrastructure side, like the wallet abstraction, the kind of baseline like GPU work that has to happen. Let's see, like, you know, if people end up, you know, I have a lot of friends that buy GPUs and customized computers as developers and artists. So like there's a whole personal computing revolution that's at play, I think. It's a little more on the cyborg side of stuff of humanity, but I think that is also growing. And then some of like kind of the psychedelics, like consciousness world as well, falls under this umbrella, which is like, what is your experience of perception? And what is your connection to like, you know, extensions of your mind that are beyond your physical form? Yeah, it's a lot. The thesis is emergent behavior.
Wow, that must be amazing. And so that's also a really interesting conversation to have around, you know, Gen AI, you know, based in Silicon Valley. How can we not talk about AI during time together? But, you know, what is your thought on using the chain to authenticate things coming out of AI, and also and or approve what is handmade, and who made what?
I mean, you know, I think I'm like kind of in favor of deep faking the internet, if I'm honest. Like, I'd be down to start clean slate and like take all this TikTok shit like out of my life. But at the same time, you know, there is such an important role of like a public commons where, you know, you're actually speaking to other humans. Like at this point, it's a psychological need for humanity to have the internet. So I think like blockchain verifications of humanity are really cool. I haven't seen a thesis yet that I think would actually manifest. Obviously, if there's something on Ethereum, like any behavior on Ethereum, I am like a maximalist around the fact that like I know there is sufficient decentralization, and I have a very high chance of figuring out if this person's like a human being or a bot. Other blockchains, I don't trust a lot of their security and like protocols to the point where I'm like, okay, this is definitely like real. I mean, I don't know, like Solana is really cool. Avalanche is awesome. Like I can see like a world of other chains representing different digital tribes of people. Yeah, I mean, the proof of humanity thing, I guess WorldCoin's choice is your eye, which I would hope that we can have a proof of humanity that is a little more of the mind. So that might involve blockchains, that might involve like places like Discord, like which it's difficult software, but it's amazing because I know I'm like working with people, they can check if there's a bot like immediately. There are pieces of software that do a good job of distinguishing like people from bots. That stuff's really important as well.
Yeah, super.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions for Shivani, please enter them in the chat. Happy to ask and take questions. And so if someone wants to start collecting on chain, like what advice would you give them to get started?
Well, I would give them a couple links to explore, which would involve like Super Rare, which is like an art marketplace. There's another art marketplace called Zora, which is really cool. Then I would also send them some links to like not artwork, which is like digital collectibles. So like maybe they're interested in like sports cards, maybe they're interested in fashion, maybe they're interested in random memes that people have made. I would send them those links, and then I would tell them like spend some time exploring, like see what you vibe with like instinctually here. Or if you're just trying to like turn a quick flip, I'll show you how to do that. But my thing is you should have a relationship to your behavior that is like going to bring something to your life, which is not just the quick endorphin rush of trading. So I ask people, what are you gravitating towards? What are you interested in? And then, once you find those things, I would look up those projects on Twitter, see what their communities are like see what they're talking about, what you find interesting. And then, and only then would I say, here's what you need to do. You need MetaMask, let's like get you started. I mean, there are projects coming out like on Avalanche, which are like completely abstracting the wallet experience. So you don't need to use MetaMask. Those places are really cool. At
Virtualness, you don't need a wallet. We create a wallet.
Yeah.
Sign up.
I think that's the future. I think so.
Buy everything with a credit card.
Yeah. Nifty Gateway had that too.
It's getting easier and easier.
Yeah. I think the symbolism and people vibe stuff is the most important to start collecting. Like what kind of images are you drawn towards? What kind of people are you drawn towards? Yeah.
Okay, so here's another question. Can you share your journey with the Crypto Museum and what makes this area an enterprising and profitable field for entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So from just like a customer base side, with Museum of Crypto Art, it is a foundation. We have a token, which is a social token, which basically the more that people found the museum interesting and valuable, the token would be a governance reflection of that. So we weren't profiting, like it wasn't set up to profit in any way, but we were able to have sustainability with having our own token. That is like a decentralized organization in practice, where your social capital is your capital, right? Aside from my experience with like running a foundation, if you're talking like pure capitalism, it's going to be in figuring out which NFTs are going to be valuable in 2 to 4 years and getting those and riding the wave. from a pure individual profit standpoint, I think the only people I've seen successfully do that have a thesis, which is beyond the fact that everyone else thinks they can make money. As soon as other people are telling you, you can make money with this project, you're not going to make money with it. So I can't tell you that that's like something that is just going to happen. It takes research. It takes like some investigation. For entrepreneurs and companies, I think there's a lot of work to be done in emerging markets, which I see so many young people who want these tools and don't have a place to go. And that might not just be in like India, right? That could be like, a population of the US that's been ignored. Like subcultures are very, very powerful. Like we can't forget that like Reddit started by being like an NSFW place for 2.5 years. Right? Like there's some fringes to the way that technology is developed, and those fringes need solutions and tools. So entrepreneurs can find subcultures and build for them. Like I've seen really successful companies in this space who just figured out that there's a young teenage boy who likes collecting sneakers, and we're going to focus on that guy, and we're going to give him really cool stuff. And they do so well. Yeah.
Yep, 100%. So what's next for the Crypto Museum?
What's next? We are right now we are like in the midst of this market. We have a grant that we're finishing. We've launched this like new NFT in this project. We have like, we're moving from a quasi DAO to a full DAO. That means, we have like 150,000 like people who will vote. Wow. On what we want to do. How many of those actually show up to vote? It's like a US election, like how many will actually show up to vote? We don't know, but we are like decentralizing to an extent, which is really cool. We're doing a couple like research reports that we're gonna launch. We have a full-time writer, my friend Max, who's like amazing writer. He is like studying and understanding why people are doing what they're doing, kind of the questions you've been asking me. He keeps putting that out there. We have a full Ethereum development team in Germany run by our technology director, Renee. They are building more and more open source stuff. So that's kind of like HTML basics for like web 2.0. In this case, a lot of the stuff we're building is how you connect 3-dimensional environments to 2-dimensional environments, like pieces of architecture. We also have an AI that we've built for the last 1.5 years, which has been trained on all the artwork and criticisms of the artwork in our collection. And we are going to deploy that in a couple months. And then my co-founder Colburn is also working on kind of like a Pinterest place that maybe younger artists who want to understand the museum or understand this entire thing in general can start to just like come in very easily and show their artwork, get feedback and stuff like that. And then me personally, I want to get into the depths of how many artists are using crypto. So I want to get that number. I want to like figure if it's not accessible, I want to actually start getting edges to that. And I want to deliver that to the Ethereum Foundation. And I want them to understand what's happening. Yeah.
Wow. You're like a real, even though like as much as you're saying your museum is, you're like a real legit museum in terms of having exhibitions, having a collection, but then also doing like really, important research.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there's any final questions, please ask them in the chat. If people want to follow you, where should they go online? How can they keep up with you in the museum?
I would say, so like we have our website, museumofcryptoart.com. Should I type it in here?
Yeah, sure.
That museumofcryptoart.com. This is my website. And then I will say also like on Twitter, it's at Museum of Crypto, and on Twitter, that's me. Yeah. Those are good places to go.
Well, Thank you for giving us something to think over as we head into the weekend, and really broadening our horizons and thinking about how all of these new technologies are interacting and moving forward also the art world. It's been such a delight to talk to you. Again, I'm Rachel Masters from Virtualness. You can find me at Twitter and Masters212 or at virtualness.io on all of our channels. And Shivani, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yeah.
My community.
So much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.